The star of any good 3D visualization in transportation and infrastructure should be the proposed project, whatever it is that you're trying to communicate to the audience. But secondary to that is the surrounding context. This is the trees, the people, the buildings, the mountains, the terrain, the bridges, the billboards. And while many of these elements can be added from a good asset library like is available in Beyond CAD, and other elements might be available through project data like terrain and aerials, the most difficult part of adding context to these projects is probably adding these buildings. My name is Sam Lytle, and I have over 10 years of 3D visualization experience. And in this video, we're going to break down all of the options that you have to add photorealistic buildings to your 3D visualization. Before I go any further, I just want to point out that not all building needs are the same. Some buildings may be far in the distance and can be very low detail. Some buildings are going to be right next to your project corridor and need to be very realistic and highly detailed and representative of the actual buildings. Some buildings can be generic and equally replicated by copying and pasting models of suburban houses or trailer parks. And so understanding that there are different types of buildings and building needs sets up this further conversation. All right, so all of that out of the way, the first way that you can get buildings to add to your Viz or BIM scene is to find buildings that are already available. These might be available from the project. Maybe an architect on the project has models that you can use. They may be available from previous projects where you used buildings in the area. Or maybe there might be landmark buildings like this project that we've done in Las Vegas or in other prominent areas where you can find these models available for purchase or for free online. The odds of finding buildings in this way are probably pretty low, but it's worth a check initially just because these are probably going to be buildings of good quality and easy to get if you can get your hands on them. All right, so the second way that you can get buildings for your scene would be to use buildings from pre-modeled asset libraries like the one found in Beyond CAD. We have dozens of buildings. These include high-rise, residential, industrial, commercial, and they can really add quick context, if possible, to your scene. And these may be most useful in further out areas from your corridor because they're not going to exactly represent the buildings that are there. And these are also really useful, as mentioned before, in areas where you have buildings that look very similar, like a suburban residential area or a trailer park. So you can just copy and paste and keep placing all of these buildings to quickly add context to your scene. In addition to using built-in asset libraries like the one in Beyond CAD, you can also find these models on online warehouses like TurboSquid, CG Trader, Sketchfab, and other places. And using pre-modeled buildings from asset libraries is one of the first places I try to go because these are already available. You're not going to have to wait for them to be modeled or created, and you can add context where necessary, even if you can't add every building for your scene. The third option is to get these buildings modeled by yourself or someone else on the project team, someone internal to the project. And if this is an option, it may be worth looking into. I have over 10 years of experience using SketchUp, and so a lot of buildings, especially simple ones, I can mock up pretty quickly. But this option starts to fall apart when you start to factor in the time cost of employees and the complexity of buildings. And so most projects and most teams aren't going to have this option available, and I wouldn't really pursue this unless you're interested in doing a lot of very specific type of visualization with building needs. When we had a visualization team at CivilFX, we had artists just dedicated to buildings because we were doing these projects all of the time, and we would build this need and this cost into our budgets. And to be sure, you can still reach out to CivilFX and they can help you. But doing internal building modeling is probably going to be one of the most expensive and time-consuming options you have available. The fourth option is to outsource the modeling to another team. Again, you could reach out to someone like CivilFX, now a division of Parametrics. Early in the days of CivilFX, I would outsource modeling to artists that do stuff like this all the time. These are the resources I recommend. The first one is Upwork.com. I use them all the time. I've used tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of hours of contractors doing work for me, including modeling buildings for these types of scenes. You can also use sites like Fiverr.com and CG Trader, though I would try Upwork first. The final option, and this is the option that I recommend the most, especially as time has moved on and the technology has gotten better, and this option has gotten more affordable and efficient, and that is to use photogrammetry. And if you're not aware, if you've ever used Google Earth 3D, you'll notice that the buildings are all there, and they didn't hire someone, they didn't outsource someone to model those buildings. They use photogrammetry, which is just the process of collecting a ton of pictures. They use sometimes satellite imagery, a lot of times they use airplanes for the more detailed buildings, and they generate tons of pictures and then use algorithms to extract out 3D geometry and textures for those buildings. And there are paid options, Pix4D, Capture Reality, and if you have those resources available within your team, I recommend using them. And you're probably going to need a drone for this as well, but there are also free resources available. I recently made a video where I showed how to do this process using Meshroom and Blender, which are free resources to model and place this water tank in a Beyond CAD scene. But that video wasn't that great and representative of what you can do, because you can do entire sections of buildings using this. It's going to be fast, they're going to look really great, and it's really going to add context to your project. And I was going to make another video, and I started doing it. I got my drone, I found a better building than the water tank, but the lighting wasn't right and it really fell apart. And to be honest, I found some resources that are much better at training how to do these free workflows if you don't already have a photogrammetry process in place. And so I recommend those. They're linked in the show notes. And so as you are moving forward, and if you are dedicated to make 3D visualization a bigger part of your company or your agency, I recommend building a robust photogrammetry workflow. You will need a drone. You will need some practice understanding the software. But if you can do this, your projects are going to look better. They're going to be more affordable, and it's going to make visualization more available to more projects. And so of all of these options, you're going to want to look at some of those early ones. You're going to want to look at finding buildings that have already been modeled. Look at the 3D asset library like the one in Beyond CAD. Maybe you want to outsource some buildings. But moving forward, if I was to do Civil FX again, we would do a lot more photogrammetry for buildings. So check out those resources. If you have thoughts on how you model buildings and you add them to your Viz or your BIM scene, let me know in the comments. You can always reach out to me. My name is Sam Lytle, and I will talk to you in the next video.